Strategy Group meeting. Before the meeting starts today, it's my pleasure to welcome two guests to present to you a presentation on the Wellbeing Community Interest Company. This presentation will last no more than half an hour, including questions. We've got Janet Doran here, who's on the end there, the Assistant Director, Northampton County Council, and also Diane McCaker. McCaker, I have to get it right. Sorry. So welcome Diane and Janet, that's easy to say it that way. I spoke to Janet earlier, she said it'd be better to take questions at the end, so I'll let you go on with the presentation, then obviously open up to questions. All the very best to you. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can I just have a show of hands at anybody that's heard of the Wellbeing Kick before? We're just trying to gauge. Okay, so we've reached about half the people in the room. So the County Council, with its partners, has welcome introductions. Okay, thank you. County Council, with its partners, NHFT and the university, have decided that they are going to set up a community interest company that is going to focus on wellbeing and prevention. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, and we've been doing this work since February this year, looking at the legal structures that might be appropriate and the sorts of services that would come together to deliver these services. Diane's going to go through a bit of that later. I'm pleased to say at full council today the Wellbeing Kit was agreed, so we are motoring on into implementation phase now. And it's a good time to come and talk to you about how we'll be working in Daventry and how we aim to work in Daventry. Thank you. We've been out on the road talking to people. Again, we'll cover a little bit of that. But people are saying, what does wellbeing mean? Either people get it straight away or they don't really know what the term means. So this is just a description for people. It doesn't fix. You can have your own description in terms of what well-being is. But we're saying we're thinking about a sense of happiness, contentment in all aspects of our lives, health, community, home, social life, financial security, and work. And that's very aspirational, isn't it? And that different things will be important to different people in terms of what their priorities are for that. But we're setting out to say, if one of those things is out of sync for you, that can have an impact overall on your physical health and your mental health. And actually, if we can get to support you early, we might be able to nip things in the bud or get some balance back in your life. That's what we're trying to do. So, what are we trying to do with this kick in particular? I've already said it's about a preventative service. It's about getting upstream and trying to stop some of the things escalating out of control for people. We have got preventative services in the county, but they're not accessed in one place. You probably have to find your way through the maze at the moment. And we don't bring together your physical health and mental health through one system, which is what we're aiming to do. The County Council is obviously interested in having a county-wide approach, so it wants to offer things consistently across the county. That doesn't mean it will be the same everywhere, but it means that there'll be a consistent approach, because obviously different parts of the county have got different issues, but also they've got different attributes. So the voluntary sector here in Daventry potentially is different to the voluntary sector in Corby, so that means where the state sector has to intervene might be in different places because of either strengths or weaknesses in that sector. So recognising differences is a key point that people have told us when we've gone out to talk to them. I talked about meandering or trying to find your way to the correct service to support you. So one of the things that we're aiming to deliver is a seamless service. So if you get involved in the kick, you could talk to us about a number of things, and then we'd work with you to try and identify your priorities on what you want to work on. So a seamless service where you're not being passed from pillar to post. A lot of people told us that, I get sent there and then I got sent there and then I got sent there. and they had to negotiate that themselves. Social meets medical. That is about us recognising that your physical health can impact on your mental well-being, and your mental well-being impacts on your physical health. So we get people pitching up at A&E because they're having heart palpitations, and actually the issue is a well-being, a mental health well-being issue. And if we just try and treat or deal with these things together, we'd have a bigger impact on people's lives. And combining skills, we're definitely bringing together the voluntary sector, the state, the public sector, and we would look to the commercial sector if there are things that we don't think that we're best in class at, to go and use their insight or ability to bring a service to the county that our local people want and deserve. Thank you. People have asked me, and some people may have seen this before and some people might not have, but in Healthier Northamptonshire, where we're trying to look at the whole change that's needed because the health sector's under pressure, and because social care's under pressure, and doctors are under pressure, and all of the social services are under pressure, where does the wellbeing kick fit in? So we obviously start with the individual in terms of what their needs and requirements are. But we're really here. So if you think about the big strategic changes that are being worked on in the county, we're very much thinking about being at a community level and responding to people within their community. And I'm not going to define community because it's different for different people, but certainly more local than the acute hospitals, if we give that as an example. So that's where we are in the strategic picture. I expect most of you know those figures. When we see them, they're a little bit shocking, and they lead to all sorts of issues for us in terms of causes of ill health and death. And when I saw this list, which is the information comes from colleagues in public health, I thought, crikey, that's a big list of diseases and conditions that the KIC is going to try and influence. And you start to think, is this doable? But the next slide is our risk factors that we need to tackle. And this is where I think the KIC comes into its own, because it's about people's lifestyle choices. So all of those facts and figures that we've got on the last but one slide lead to those diseases, but actually to make an impact on them, these are the things that we need to do something about. And that feels a bit more achievable to me in terms of working with people to reduce their weight, introducing things into people's lives to help with high blood pressure, increasing physical activity. They're not medical things, they are things that we can do for ourselves, and if people need a bit of encouragement, it's things you don't need a prescription, even though you might get a social prescription to deal with them. So they're the things that we want to work with people on. That's what we're focusing on. We thought we'd bring this down to Daventry level, and we haven't got the stats for every single thing, but what this slide is showing you is if we took Daventry as 100 people, some things are good and some things are not so good in relation to the national average. So I've got to put the glasses on for this bit because I can't see my figures otherwise. So this was 67 people out of 100 are overweight or obese. You don't have to be that big to be overweight, by the way. it's quite scary. Your residents, there's a few more people overweight in Daventry than there is in Northamptonshire, and the figure for Northamptonshire, if we did this for Northamptonshire, 100 people, it would be 59. So we've got some issues around, we've got some issues in the county overall around overweight and obesity. Numbers who drink alcohol to unsafe levels. Where have we got alcohol?
24. At the
Yeah,
bottom.
24. So it's 23, so that's just one person. Number of new cases of severe mental health, you're right on par with the rest of the county. So we've got 14 out of 100 people who smoke, and smoking is still the biggest killer in the county. So if we want to elongate people's lives, we can have an impact on smoking, that would be a really good thing for us to do. So if we're trying to think about impacting these sorts of things, and we're trying to think about Daventry and what it's got already, the KIP wants to come and work with what's already here and try and mesh things together so that people can access services easily. Is that you? Handing over to work today.
So I'm just going to give you an update very quickly on what we've done so far. Again, can you hear me? Yes? Yes. Was it this? That's it. The left-hand one. That's it. As Janet mentioned earlier, we've been given permission through the council to start our operation in December, which is actually just next week, so we're going to be pretty busy. But we're just going to start some very small smoking cessation services next week. And then we're looking to have a full launch of our services in April next year. So even that isn't that far away. We've only got 3 to 4 months before we're going to be fully operational. So a lot still to do. We're registered as a community interest company. So we're legal and we can start to trade, which means if we want to look at how we can generate new income opportunities, the company is set up to do that. But our primary focus, certainly for the next 18 months, is let's make sure we deliver our services safely and effectively within the county. And we've done significant engagement with residents and providers so far. And the next slide is going to give you an idea of that. So way back in May time, we did a survey for all residents. We had around 1,187 residents who actually responded to that survey. And the survey was designed to find out what people thought about wellbeing services, the types of things that they would like to see delivered from the community interest company, and how they would like to access it. We then did 22 road shows, and I know, having seen some of your faces, that you have been at the road shows, so thank you for your input to that. And we went out to our providers. We did 4 provider road shows as well. So that's people who are working in the voluntary and community sector, people who are working generally in the public sector, anyone who has some kind of contact at the moment in the type of service area that the KIP will be covering going forward. And we
That's just us in Daventry.
that's us in Daventry, as you can see. So, really great opportunity. Absolutely love doing those roadshows. The amount of feedback that we got back, and it gave us a sense of confidence that what we're designing is what people need. And these are the key themes that came out of the roadshows with the public. And basically said to them, look, tell us what we must remember. So whatever we do with this kit, you tell us what's most important to you. And these are the key things in terms of how we design the service we should remember. First is confidence in the workforce. So basically people saying, whatever you do, however you set this up, make sure that people who are delivering the services are expert at what they do. So that they've got proper training, that they've been recruited from the right areas. We know you want to do things differently. We understand why you want to do things differently, but it's really important that the people who deliver it are professional in what they do. Great, you've come out, you've talked to us, you've asked us for our input, but keep talking to us. This is for us. If you really want us to use it and you want us to get the best out of it, make sure you continue to communicate and engage with us. And that's what we've done. So we're coming back out again to do even more engagement. And this one, personalised approach. Very important that we recognise that we're all different. We're different because we come from different areas of the county, but we're also different because we have our own personal support networks, and those can be very different for some people than from others. So when you're designing this service, this is not an off-the-shelf, one-size-fits-all. It has to be about what the individual needs are. Quality assurance. How will we know that the KIC's doing a good job? Who will be accountable? How will we, the residents, hold you accountable for what you're doing? And one of the things that's very clear to us is that we absolutely, from day one, must have a set of performance indicators and measures in place that will mean that our outcomes can be scrutinised and meet the needs of what we've been asked to do. So the university will be working very closely with us in terms of designing how we can monitor our progress and make sure that if at any point in time we're not achieving those outcomes, we're going back and re-looking and redesigning what we're doing. And then partnership working. This is the whole spectrum. This is working with our users, our customers in partnership, making sure that the service is always relevant to what they need, because those needs will change over time, and working with the providers, particularly the voluntary and community sector, because there's so much expertise out there that we need to tap into. As Janet said earlier, it's different across the county. So recognising where the strengths are, where we need to top up, but where we can rely on a lot of input to help the community interest company do its job. This is really important to people. We talk about a holistic, person-centred model. What it really just means is treat me as a whole person. So often people have complex needs. They may turn up at the door of the community interest company, or they may ring us up and say there's one particular thing on their mind. But actually there may be a number of things that's causing that, and it may have just taken one thing to push them into action to contact us. And it's up to the community interest company to try and find out as much as they can about what that person's individual needs are. So treat the person in whole rather than just one particular thing that may be bothering them. And we've talked about, you hear this phrase over and over again, tell your story once. Where instead of people having to feel that once they enter the system, they tell their story, but depending on what the outcome of that is, they may have to tell their story to someone else again or to another service. It's really important when they come into the kick that once that story's been told, as much as they'll give us in that initial visit, that we build on it and we pass that on in the appropriate way with the right governance measures in place to ensure that that person's stress levels are taken down, that they are able to feel that we've joined up and that we're in alignment with all of the other support services that they may eventually be referred on to. So this person-centred model is really what it's all about. Think about accessibility. Where are you going to put the wellbeing kick? Where are the wellbeing advisors going to be situated? All of that's important. Are they going to be multi-skilled? Absolutely, because we can't do our job unless they've got a lot of knowledge. Hence why it's important that they're well trained and professional in what they do. And think about integrated services. Don't pass us from pillar to post. Think about how we can be moved through the system in the most supportive way. Okay. So, in terms of, when we went out originally, these were the top 10 services that the residents in the county were saying they wanted to see included in the Wellbeing Community Interest Company. And the ones in green are the 5 services that we are going to provide in-house from day one. So those are directly delivered services from the Wellbeing Community Interest Company through the Wellbeing Specialists and the Wellbeing Advisors. The others are services where we will refer on to providers who are already in the system, who are the right people to do that job. And the other things that when we think out, these are things that we hadn't originally intended to provide in the kick at day one. But in fact, very strongly, were supported by the residents as things that we felt the kick could offer them and fit with the rest of the things that we were doing. So we have now gone back and included services to address each of these needs in the kick. So we again, someone comes in with a whole lot of needs, quite complex needs, we are able to find something for them to cover this full range. This is very, very small and messy, but there are copies of it on your desk. Very, very briefly, a very quick look at how we're going to operate our model and how people will use the Wellbeing Community Interest Company. They'll come in, they might phone initially, come through our customer service centre, they'll have a quick screening, but it will be done in a way that asks the right questions. We've taken those questions out, we've talked to the public, we've had their feedback, We've redesigned our questions, all designed to be able to make the process smooth for the resident, but also to get as much information as they need. Depending on what comes out of that, we will then go into a much longer, what we're calling whole person assessment, where we're able to try and look at their needs in each of these 4 key areas, that areas that Janet was referring to earlier, your social, your mental, physical and economic well-being, because all of those have an impact on how well and what to be doing. And then depending on what comes out of that, you will be given a personalised well-being plan. It's your plan, it's designed for you, it's not an off-the-shelf prescription. It will include areas of social prescription, which Janet said, so we may very well be asking people to go off and look at services that are available within the county on a social basis, but everything is personalised to what that individual needs. What this means for Daventry, well, we've had a look at what we now need to do. So having had permission to move forward, knowing that that's what our residents are asking us for, we're now at the stage where we actually have to design the model. Where will we put people and what will those people be doing, etc. So at the moment we've been basing it on really areas of greatest needs. So we have to look at what the needs are in the county, where the areas of greatest deprivation are, where the inequalities are. And at the moment, our figures are telling us there's probably going to be at least 2 wellbeing advisors who will be based in the Daventry area, possibly more. And their job will be to link up with the other services that are around the county, in the district, to be able to provide the best services. So, for example, as Janet said, we want to be in that community hub area. So, linking up perhaps with GP practices, having a presence in GP practices, so that the wellbeing kit becomes an established, well-known option for people, which will take the pressure off of the GPs. That detail we still have to fully work through, but that is the next part of the plan. So I said earlier, we established in December, further development work through now to April, and from April we'll be operational, and we will have at least 1, probably 2 kit advisors in Daventry. What we're doing in terms of the operational work, a lot of information will start to be on our website. If you're interested, please look there or ring us and we'll come and talk to you about it. And that's it. Questions?
Well, thank you indeed, Janet and Dan, for that very succinct presentation, a lot of information on there. We only got about 5 minutes for questions, but I just want to kick off on one for me. I'll try and keep it strategic if you can and short. My question really relates around who's paying for this, because obviously there's going to be benefits to GP surgeries, so do they contribute at all to the service?
So the initial assessment cost is County Council and Public Health.
Right, okay, thank you. Colin?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Mine's very brief. I noticed from your diagram that of the 100 people in Daventry, only 5 come from deprived areas. That's one comment. The other comment is you had CAB included in your brief. Does that mean the county are going to increase their funding? And finally, the diagram or the map on the last page, I would have preferred that Daventry, as an urban conurbation, would have had a much larger map, so we could almost cut it down to wards within the town.
Thank you.
The first and the third comments, which we'll take back, thank you. The second one, which was about funding for CAB. When we were out on the road, CAB was used as a shorthand for advice and information services. The County Council has a contract in place with Community Law Service, county-wide provider, that has subcontracts in place with some local providers. That contract will move into the KIC and will be managed by the KIC from the 1st of April.
Thank you. Alan?
As a district councillor, I've been to 3 of your road shows, so I've seen that from that angle. But I go back to my portfolio role on the district, part of which is sport. And I go regularly to the end sport meetings.
Oh yeah, there's a question coming up.
Now they talk about the CIC, and they don't seem to be very aware of what their part in it is and where the funding, etc., is coming from on that. So, and when I go to the road shows, I haven't seen a lot of mention of sport, which is very much part of the prevention side of things. What is your take on that?
Yeah, thank you for that question, because it's really important. The services that are within the County Council at the moment, of which End Sport is a bit of the County Council, we've only just got agreement at Cabinet still in November, to start talking about moving those services into the KIC. So we've been speaking with the End Sport since February about the likelihood, but the absolute detail, we didn't get permission to do that work until November. We absolutely won't make the impact that we want to make if sport and physical activity isn't part of the offer. So we're in negotiation with Sport England through End Sport to make sure that that partnership is strong.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Mike.
Daventry is a very rural district, and I hear you suggest that you've got 2 advisors for Daventry. I fear for the outlying districts, so the villages that really will find it difficult to get into, the 2 advisors. Are you planning to go out to the villages, or are they going to be static?
So when we looked at this, so the amount of funding that is available is finite, obviously. We're going to be funded to deliver an impact on health inequalities. So what we've had to look at is where the most unequal outcomes are across the county. Obviously, there are unequal outcomes for people in Daventry. That's where the main focus will be. What people have told us, and as technology develops, people will be able to access services on the phone and through the web. And as that develops, that offer will develop further. Where there is a specific issue locally, we will try to meet that need. But the county's massive, isn't it? And Daventry district, I'm well aware of how big it is. I'm not going to say we're going to have full coverage, because that wouldn't be the truth. We will be focusing where we can do the most, we'll have the biggest bang for our buck. What we do have is strong feedback around peer support, and that's where our voluntary and community sector partners will come into this. We're doing quite a lot of work with public health researchers to find out what makes things successful for people. And so a point I'm trying to make is there might be somebody that goes through an experience or a service that lives in a village who then becomes a peer mentor. So our reach should be greater than just the wellbeing advisors that are part of the KIC.
I think it's linking in with, we know there are other people in the system already. For instance, community connectors and other peer coordinators that exist in the system somewhere. And one of the real key things that KIC's got to do, if it's going to do well, is align with those services, work together so that the resources are finding out who's vulnerable in each different areas.
Thanks for that, Mike. Actually, the district is 257 square miles, 73 parishes, including Down parish, so it's a big area.
Yeah.
I think the point about the rurality is an important one, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Got one more question, Abigail.
Thanks. You mentioned your ambition for the KIC to generate income in the long term. How do you anticipate that might happen?
So I think there are different ways that we can do it. Some of these services, and we were talking earlier about End Sport, where weight management is clearly something that's a big issue across the county. A lot of people will be entitled to weight management services free because they currently are, and it's an urgent just to make sure we provide that. There's a lot of people who aren't, who would be prepared to pay for it. So one of the things the KIC has to do is make sure that services are comparable with what other residents would pay for, and have an offering which we can appropriately ask people to pay for. So it's both looking at services that we provide which would not be free to certain individuals. Can we make those attractive so they will come and use them? And then also thinking about the types of things that perhaps because we have the expertise in the KIC, we could look at new services which would be paid for services but would be attractive.
I'd just like to mention, apart from the library services, all the services that are transferring to the KIC from the County Council, the universal services, already generate their own income. They don't receive subsidy through the taxpayer anymore. So I know there's some nervousness around this, but when we're saying generating income, we've been doing it for a long time with some of the services.
It's just joining up. and having people coming through the kick, there are opportunities to refer. And if we can bring that income into the kick as away from the private sector, where it's currently being spent, then we can reinvest it back into the kick to generate even more services. So any income we can bring in is a reinvestment opportunity.
Thank you, Abigail. Thank you very much indeed, ladies.
Thank you.
It's been very, very
Thanks very much
useful
for your
for
time.
the update, and no doubt we'll see you again sometime in the
Yes,
future.
thank you.
Further update. Thank you. Thanks, Jack. Okay, everyone, we've got a very challenging agenda tonight, and I was going to set some ground rules tonight. I don't want repeating comments if possible. People, when they speak, they can be succinct to the point, because I think it's helpful to get through these papers. Some papers will take longer than others, which is fine. I want to give everyone the opportunity to speak, whether on the committee or not on the committee, and please show your hand up. But it'd be helpful if you don't repeat too much and we get to these meetings best we can without devaluing the quality of the actual debate. So we kick off first of all with minutes, please. Are you happy that I signed the minutes off held on the 15th of October as a correct record?
Great.
Good. Apologies for absence.
Number 8, Chairman.
Number C, thank you, Steve. Was apology from Jan Redmond. Her apologies. Jan Redmond tonight for apologies. Thank you. Declarations and members' interests. Declare them now or at the point of the actual item. Not declared at the moment. Thank you. First substantive item tonight, access and communication issues, BT payphones, Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chair. This is a very, very quick one. It's regarding Crick Parish Council looking to adopt the red K6 telephone box. To do so, they have to have BT to remove the internals of the telephone box. To enable Parish Council, the Crick Parish Council to adopt the telephone box, I would suggest that this council does not raise any objections to the removal of the telephone equipment within.
Thanks, Councillor Howard. Any questions? We're happy to accept the recommendation. Resolved item, actually. Good, thank you. Thanks, Councillor Howard. Now we move on to housing and environmental health issues. The first item tonight is food and safety service plans. Councillor Warren.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report is to bring the service plans for food safety and health and safety before Daventry District Council as required by the Food Standard Agency and the Health and Safety Executive. The Food Standard Agency and the Health and Safety Executive have issued statutory instructions to local authorities. These require the Council to produce a service plan for food safety and occupational health and safety. Although there are minor differences between the requirements of the plans, the major requirements are common to both plans, as listed in item 4. There are two additions for food safety only. There must be procedures and capacity to deal with food safety and incidents. And second, foodstuffs must be sampled in accordance with central government guidance. The attached plans show the proposed implementation of these plans for Daventry District Council. There are no significant changes to the 2014-15 service plans, although minor changes include two items in section 4.2. Emphasis that the better regulation concept is a key part of our regulatory service, and the inclusion of workplace health and well-being within the occupational health and safety priorities themes. I bring the point to 5.5. The service plans will form the occupational direction of the Council in respect to food and health and safety enforcement. In conclusion, the approval of the achievements of the 2015-16 Food Safety and Health and Safety Service Plans will satisfy the requirements of the Food Standards Agency and the Health and Safety Executive. Therefore, I ask that it be recommended that the Council approve the Food Service Plan and Health and Safety Service Plan for the year April 2015 to the 31st of March 2016.
Thank you, Steve, Councillor Warren. This is an important function of this Council, so it's an important recommendation for us. Are there any comments or questions? If not, are you happy with the recommendation before us? Great. Thank you. The second item, Councillor Warren, is review of allocation scheme.
Thank you, Chair. This report is to consider responses made to the consultation exercise on the focus review of the allocation schemes and to recommend revisions accordingly. Members will recall that in July 2015 meeting of the strategy group, authority was granted to undertake consultation on minor revisions to the allocation scheme, and this was to address one, the introduction of new legislation which provides a legal base for the government's proposed right to move for existing social tenants for work-related reasons. Two, responding to issues of low demand property through the proposed inclusion of the low demand property protocol. And three, to clarify the approval arrangements of local lettings arrangements and make some other minor changes. In addition, during this period, it was identified that there were necessary to address two further issues, and they being the two issues have been identified in terms of the local connection criteria within the allocation scheme, which require urgent attention. And the first one is those that have been accepted as homeless by the council due to harm or violence in another area would not have a local connection to the area and therefore are not entitled to register on the housing waiting list. However, the council has a duty towards these people under Part 7 of the Housing Act 1996, leaving these applicants in temporary accommodation, including bed and breakfast, for a prolonged period would have a financial implication to the council and possibly a detrimental effect on the applicant's health and well-being. The numbers in this category are very low. And two, currently some children are in care, are placed outside of the district by Northamptonshire County Council. Once they have left care, they may not be able to return to the district due to not being able to establish the local connection. County Council has requested this be changed in the interest of the welfare of the young people concerned. Again, the numbers involved are expected to be extremely low. It is therefore considered that the allocation scheme be changed to allow these groups of applicants onto the list without a local connection. Registered providers were consulted on these further changes and no objections were raised. These changes are therefore proposed. In conclusion, focused consultation was undertaken on a number of issues that have arisen since the allocation scheme was last revised. Whilst no major issues were raised, some matters were considered important to consultees and a number of changes to the draft are proposed accordingly. I therefore ask the group to recommend that the suggested responses to the consultation on the allocation scheme review, as set out in Appendix A, be noted. Two, that the proposed changes to the allocation scheme, as set out in Appendix B, be agreed. And three, that the allocation scheme revised as per to above be adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor Warren. Councillor Osborne.
2 points, Chairman.
Yep.
On the fact of children going out from the County Council,
Yep.
I'm aware that a little while ago there were some 200 going out from the county,
Overall.
from the counties to be looked after. Majority of those 200 were not English people. That they were people that had come from other countries. Being as loose as it is, I would have thought that this council should have a policy. If the person originally comes from here and then goes out of the county, goes out to the district, they should be able to come back. But this leaves it open to Daventry taking quite a few people that have no connection at all whatsoever with this district, that never have had. In fact, no connection with this country, except the fact that the county have sent them out. That's one point which I get a little worried about. And the other point was, I had a discussion yesterday with, well, it's not DDH anymore, with a DDH employee, and I didn't realise, perhaps somebody can put me right, that they told me that the allocation of sheltered accommodation, the age had gone down to 45. you can go into a sheltered accommodation above 45, which concerned me. I don't remember that coming via this council or indeed committee. So I don't know whether suddenly they've made the allocation, but I know that this council makes allocations, so it must be this policy. She was following that policy because we were talking about two different age groups. As we're mostly aware, two different generations do not mix together very well, and it has been found that in some sheltered accommodations where there are younger people, they don't mix, so perhaps you can comment on that as well.
Thanks indeed, Councillor, for those 2 points. Can I ask Simon Bowers, you're the author of this report, Simon, on response to those?
I think claiming personal authorship, Chair, was a bit strong, but I'm fairly confident, but I'm trying to find it now. It's always the way the text eludes you when you're looking for it. That the young people, we are talking about allowing them who historically have finished from the district to come back.
With this district?
Exactly so. He's not.
I don't have a problem.
He's not intended to allow the situation you're describing. In terms of 45, I'm sure we have not made a change. As you rightly say, it would have had to come to this committee and council. It may be that DDH itself made a change, which may or may not have been discussed with us, but we'll certainly look into that.
I was told it was changed this year.
Well then, Simon's going to...
Thank you, if you can.
Thank you very much, Steve. Councillor Guildford.
A couple of points that are different but similar to Steve's.
Yeah.
Two on going out of the district. From working within the NHS, the county council are moving vulnerable people out of the district to other hospitals, etc. Because there's not the capacity within the district. So it's one, how it would affect those people coming back, because they're not similar from the children principle. Two, regarding the sheltered, I know there's been difficulty letting sheltered, and my mother's in sheltered, and they're empty. But there are lower age, I've noticed there's lower age, and I thought it was a good mix, because the younger look after the older.
That's fine, that's good. I didn't use. Any points on that to come back on, Simon?
No, I mean, Tony's found one of the points for me. Our age limit is still 60.
Yes, on page 74 actually, it's going to refer members to page 74. So it would be DDH that's changed that, but we've not been notified that's the case. Is what Steve was saying is
yes,
right.
I'm aware they have had some difficulties filling their shelter stock, and maybe that's what's driven it, but we'll explore that with them.
Thank you, Mr. Leeser.
And then the hospital usage, where they're moved out of the district because there's no placements in the district as well.
Their main place of residence will still be the district. The hospital, it doesn't become your home, and therefore there's that level of connection.
Right.
Thanks, Simon. Councillor Cecile Edmondsmith.
Thank you, Chairman. With look after children out of county, we had a lot of discussion. For your information, every time the county sends a child out of county, it costs the county £3,500 a week. So therefore, if we reduce by 50 children per year, we are talking 3 or 4 million at one go. So the county, and I find it, if you ask all the people that you meet, how much would it cost to look after a child out of county, and when you say that £3,500, people cannot believe it. So therefore, I don't think for this change, you are not talking about a lot of people, and I think the county should try to have, and they are trying to change the law, that because all the county have the same problem. I mean, it's not just. So it sounds stupid that we all shift children there and there. So at one point, I think that should be resolved at one. But £3,500.
Thank you, Steve. That's Cecile. And of course, you are a county councillor,
yes.
so hopefully you use your influence in that body.
I have.
Okay, that's good. Thank you much indeed. If there's no more questions, are you happy to set the 3 recommendations before you? Great. Thank you much indeed. Third one, Councillor Warren, is, well, you're on the run tonight, revision of contaminated land strategy, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Since April 2000, local authorities have had a duty to manage contaminated land issues within their areas. The duty was conferred by Part 2A of the Environmental Protection Act 1990 and associated statutory guidance. The Act gives local authorities the lead role in dealing with contaminated land and requires each authority to publish a written strategy setting out how it will carry out its duties. Daventry District Council published its strategic approach to managing contaminated land in 2001. Following the publication in April 2012, a new statutory guidance from DEFRA, the 2001 Contaminated Land Strategy has been reviewed and revised. The revised policy set out in Appendix 1 outlines how the Council will implement the contaminated land regime, taking account of the latest guidance. The 2001 strategy set out an approach which involved a complex process of site prioritisation followed up by proactive site inspection. It was intended that officers would use their powers to require landowners to remedy or control the potential risk of pollution. In practice, environmental protection officers found that the extent of development within the district secured an ongoing programme of remediation without the need for proactive enforcement work. The strategy now proposed reflects this approach, which reflects actual national practice and is a continuation of the status quo here at Daventry. Even though the approach is proactively identified and remedy contaminated land as intended by the 2001 strategy, has not been delivered. The operational reality is that there have been no negative consequences for the Council. Engaging landowners through the management of development in an effective means of identifying, managing and controlling contaminated land risks. Many potentially polluting sites have already been remediated, redeveloped, or are still in active industrial use. Many brownfield sites have been or are due to be developed under planning controls, which ensure that the remediated were necessary. In summary, this update reflects the continued use of planning development process to remediate potentially contaminated land as against the proactive enforcement-led approach envisioned in the original strategy. This is explained in more detail under point 4, strategic inspection. See pages 16 to 19 of the updated strategy document on Appendix 1. In conclusion, most of the potentially polluting sites across the district have already been remediated, redeveloped, or are still in active industrial use. The Council considers that it can better prioritise its response to the risks of land contamination within the district by acting on information concerning the current status of sites. This approach will combine use of development control provisions for sites undergoing development with a robust response to reports and complaints about potentially contaminated land. This approach would replace the previous prioritisation and proactive site inspection approach set out in the 2001 strategy. I therefore ask that it be recommended that the Contaminated Land Strategy January 2016 revision be adopted.
Many thanks, Councillor Warren. Are there any comments or questions? Councillor Griffin.
Just one brief question, please. I was wondering about Japanese knotweed because we had difficulty on one of our sites, didn't we? And we had to continually treat it. I didn't see it in the report. I wondered if Paul Knight might like to comment on this.
Paul?
Japanese knotweed is kind of outside the area of contaminated land. That's dealt with as a nuisance, so it's something we would deal with individually. That's about trying to prevent the spread of it and then controlling it in situ if it's going to cause a problem or if it's going to go to the neighbouring premises and cause problems. So it's going to spread it effectively.
I believe it is an offence to allow it to spread on neighbouring land. And I think there's something on our website about it.
Yes, there is, yes. It's come up in the last couple of years. It's been a particular interest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Griffin. Councillor Osborne.
Just a quick one. Did we ever find contaminated land on Daleman's Springwater Farmer Creek? I know he was a dealer in contaminated land. And did he ever dump any there, and did we find it there?
Simon?
What we do have is a register of contaminated land from the legacy of industry that were in those sites before. But what's happened by the planning process is those patches of land that have been dealt with through the planning process. So that I don't know anything about.
We'll do that outside the meeting. So I'll pull out on Tuesday. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Are you happy to set the recommendation?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan, Gambling Act Policy 2005 Policy Statement 3-yearly review.
Thank you. Actually, Councillor Carter will lead on this one.
Thank you, Mr. D. Councillor Warren, Councillor Carter, welcome to the meeting.
Thank you.
Very happy for you to lead on this, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. This is a 3-yearly review of the Gambling Act policy statement, which we're obliged to do. It's differing very little in terms of its content from previous issues. One of the main things is that we were, in the past, the front page always included the logos of all the other local authorities in the county, because it's still drafted as a county-wide policy document. However, we were then informed that we could not do that, and therefore the front page will see just after Daventry District Council, as each local authority has to have its own policy document. The only other thing that strategy group need to be aware of is that we are still recommending that the council adopts a no casinos resolution under section 166 of the Gambling Act 2005. If we go to the policy of not adopting, we have an option of either not adopting a no casino policy or adopting a no casino resolution. And to date, the council has not received any registration or of interest for a casino, and there are no existing casinos in the Daventry district. In passing a no casinos resolution, the authority may take into account any principle or matter, not just the licensing objectives. The council passed a no casino resolution in December 2006, November 2009, December 2012. And the latter of that is incorporated in the existing policy, but that resolution legally lapses after 3 years. On the 16th of September 2015, the licensing committee recommended that council adopts a further no casino resolution. And that basically, Chairman, is all that the document is before you.
Thank you, Steve, Councillor Carter, and of course you do chair the licensing committee, so thank you for your report there. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Wesley.
Yeah, what's the rationale behind saying no casinos? Is it not just better to say yes, we can have one if somebody comes forward with a really good option on it? I'd have thought there are possibilities of development, revenue, tourists, etc., within the town.
Okay.
Councillor Carter.
Thank you. I hear what you say, Councillor. We decided this in 2006. From memory, this was under a previous government, that there was talk of super casinos being built in the country, and basically that option could be anywhere. We decided as a district that would not be appropriate for Daventry district, and as we were given the option of adopting a no casino resolution, that is the route we intended to take. And that has worked very well since then. I did actually say in the last time this policy was reviewed that should anyone with the wherewithal to come forward with a planning application for a casino in the district, it would be looked at under the planning regulations and appropriate action taken accordingly. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Wesley.
Yeah, would they be put off because we have a no casino rule? I mean, is that why you think about trying to have you want one? I'm not advocating casinos for sale. I'm just
I thought you might have something in mind, actually.
Perhaps I could refer to Councillor Osborne as Chairman of Planning. I'm not sure
We've had
whether
deal planning applications in this meeting, it really is. So
Yeah.
the application comes in to be dealt with.
Yes.
But this is a 3-year, lapses in 3 years anyway, this policy every 3 years.
Yes, it does.
So the key point here is that if something did come in, it would be dealt with in the planning process anyway, I guess.
Yeah.
Tony?
Chairman, perhaps I can help a little. If an application does come forward during the life of this resolution, then a revocation of the resolution could be sought by council. So we don't need to wait 3 years for it to be dealt with as an existing issue.
Thank you, Steve, for that,
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you for that. Councillor Cecile Evansworth.
Yes, because you passed that in 2006, and before we didn't have online gambling. Now we do have online gambling. All the big casinos are online, and I think it may be better if we have a casino, if it's small and so on, that people could go, because I think online gambling is it's worse than going physically to a casino, because people cannot see. And with mental health, I know somebody in my district, his wife gambled £120,000 and he had no idea, and it was online. So casino, I think in 2006... No, it wasn't. But in fact, it was not far away from where you are.
Okay, thank you. Well, here or back in Richmond?
And it's a Windsor next door to you.
May I come back on that? Just
yes, of course you can.
Thank you. Councillor Swift, if you look at the last page of the recommendations here, it says the lack of existing casinos within the district and no interest in applying for a casino premises licence would indicate the appropriateness of a no casinos resolution. That, I think, is a fail-safe position for us all. And as Tony Gillette pointed out, it can be revoked if circumstances come forward to discuss that.
I think I should do that, Mr. Carter. So, Councillor Paul, do you want to...
I think it's covered. It's safe to say there are various rules within licensing that, apart from the gambling, there would be alcohol and planning. So.
Thanks, Scott. I think I should do that. Are you happy to agree the two recommendations before you? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Councillor Lloyd. And Councillor Carter. I meant the four. Well, yes, you delegated one to Councillor Lloyd to London. We move on to strategic planning issues now. Three items under this heading. First one is West Hampton Neighbourhood Development Plan. Councillor Charter.
Thank you, Chairman. Members will be quite familiar with some of the process of neighbourhood development plan production. Because we are doing very well. 30% of our parishes have designated the neighbourhood development area and have made a lot of progress. I'm very pleased that one of them, West Hampton Parish, has got as far as having a plan submitted to us, and it's then gone on forward for examination by a nominated inspector. And during that examination, a number of points were raised by the inspector. Many of them of a more or less technical nature. And so what we're asking that should happen now, just to bring you up to date with the process, is that we have to, as a council, approve the notion of the plan as approved by the inspector with the modifications suggested by the inspector should go for a referendum. But we have to pay for the referendum, of course, that's in the legislation. But I said as a council we make these decisions. It's clear from the law that if the result of the referendum is that more than 50% of those voting vote in favour of the neighbourhood plan, then the plan should be made. That's the term they use for adoption. And so therefore the council doesn't have the option of saying, oh no, we're not going to make that plan. And therefore that is why there is a recommendation in point 6 of the 7 recommendations brought before you this evening. And I'll just dwell on that in a moment. So I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the process. I just wanted to point you to the 7 recommendations. Firstly and importantly, that the significant progress in making a neighbourhood development plan by West Hampton community be noted and welcomed. I think we should congratulate them, and I shall pass this on to DCLG through my neighbourhood champion route. They've already noted with pleasure that we have so many neighbourhood development areas designated, so they like what we're doing. Number 2, the examiner's recommended modifications in respect of the West Hampton Neighbourhood Development Plan are accepted. Number 3, that the examiner's recommendation that the NDP is modified in accordance with recommendation 2, should proceed to a referendum, and the examiner also confirmed that the area of the vote for the referendum should be the parish of West Haddon, just so that we know exactly what's on here. And number 4, the costs of the referendum be met from the earmark reserved for neighbourhood planning. We knew we were going to have to pay for these, so we put some money aside. 5, that following the referendum, if more than half of those voting in the referendum vote in favour of the NDP, and if the business manager is satisfied that making the NDP would not contravene convention rights or European Union obligations, I think I can tell you that he's already looked at that, and he's satisfied that as far as he can tell they don't. And number 6, this is the important one perhaps, that if the NDP is made in accordance with recommendation 5, i.e. as a result of the referendum, then this should be as soon as practicable after the referendum result is announced by the returning officer. And that means that we don't want to wait for a council meeting. We know, particularly in West Haddon Parish, that if we leave too many gaps in the planning documentation, developers will sneak through those gaps. So we want this plan to be on the books, made, and therefore a material consideration with 100% weight as soon as possible. That's the reason for that. And then the final recommendation, that subject to items 2 to 5 inclusive, the proposed decision statement set out in Appendix 1 be approved. We have to have a document, and so one has been drafted. I don't think there's anything else much to say on that, Chairman.
Actually, Councillor Charles, a very full summary there. As a local ward member, can I just reiterate the point you made regarding point 6, very, very important that. And I can tell you that West Haddon Village has been fully engaged in this process, which has been very encouraging. So I think it's very, very important that what they say is taken into account in future planning applications, etc.
I know, with your permission, or possibly even without it, Chairman, I thought of writing to the leader of the Neighbourhood Development Planning Group with my own congratulations as neighbourhood champion.
Well, I'm very happy to support that, actually. Sorry, Councillor Oswald.
Again, as a local member, I agree with you. We've got a good, efficient local government in the village. They know what they're doing. The village know what they're doing. And the sooner they get even more added protection to what has been pillage of their village over the last 5 years, the better. So, good old West Haddon.
Thank you, Councillor Oswald. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you. Yeah, well, here, I know how much work is involved, and absolutely would. Actually, congratulations. I just wanted a clarification on the financial implications, just to make sure I understand it. So these are costs that this council receives from the government to support the costs that we expend.
£3,000 has been the cost of the referendum.
And then 5,000 and then 20,000. And will that happen on each occasion that a neighbourhood plan is?
That is our current understanding, yes.
Current understanding.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Any more comments? If not, are you happy to agree the recommendation?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you, Councillor Charter. The second one is strategic planning in West Northamptonshire. Councillor Charter.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The subject dear to the heart of many of us. Basically, what this paper is drawing to your attention is that the West Northamptonshire Joint Strategic Planning Committee has, we believe, achieved what it was mainly set up to do, which was to produce and agree and adopt a joint core strategy for the West Northamptonshire development area. That has been successfully achieved, not without a certain amount of discussion, I have to say, some of it very animated. And what we would like to do is to move on a bit so that the more of the strategic planning can revert to the individual local planning authorities rather than have to go through this joint strategic committee all the time. We know what the overall framework is, that's the joint core strategy. We've all agreed that's adopted. So now we want to get on with our own bit, obviously still dealing with our neighbours. We still are bound by a duty to cooperate. That's part of the National Planning Policy Framework. We wouldn't want to avoid that in any case. Now it turns out, although you probably remember this anyway, that the Joint Strategic Planning Committee was actually established by the Secretary of State under a statutory instrument. And the terms of that instrument and that establishment are such that we cannot unilaterally decide to disband the Joint Strategic Planning Committee. We have to ask the Secretary of State to revoke the statutory instrument. So the point of this paper is to outline for you, I'm prepared to discuss it if you want to, but I wasn't going to, the detail of how we propose to work together in future through a memorandum of understanding and a joint strategic planning board, which is an advisory body but not a decision-making body, to replace the Joint Strategic Planning Committee. And in order to achieve that, we have these two recommendations. The one is that the Council writes formally to the Secretary of State to request the revocation of the order under Section 31(2) of the plan, etc. You can see it there. So that would disband effectively the Joint Strategic Planning Committee. And in the event that the Secretary of State does revoke the order, that the Council then will support the establishment of a Joint Planning and Infrastructure Board, supported by a Memorandum of Cooperation, which is generally set out in draft form. You've seen it. And also may withdraw from or agree to modify or terminate existing agreements that complement the joint committee arrangements so as to give effect to the new arrangements. This is a technicality really. We want to be able to work together, but we want to be able to decide our own future, not be held to ransom by other members of the Joint Strategic Planning Committee, not that there are, it has happened, I think. The Joint Strategic Planning Committee itself has agreed at a very recent meeting, 20th of October, that this should be the way forward. It's agreed the draft set up for the Joint Planning and Infrastructure Board. The funding is in place. You will see from the documentation that goes with this committee and with the Joint Planning Unit that we will retain a joint planning unit, although its name might shift a bit, because that is the way to maximise the economic production of evidence that we all need in the support of the development of our plans. It saves a lot of repetition of work. The Joint Strategic Committee has agreed its budget for the future, and the agreement of the budget and some of the money that was set aside to do things which we now think we'd like to do individually means that some of the money will be refunded to the contributing authorities. The County Council, of course, has been a member of this committee but has never put any money in, and so they won't be getting any back. I just wanted to make that clear. And so I would ask, therefore, for your support for the two recommendations, Chairman, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you much indeed, Councillor Charlton. Going back many years, this whole process kicked off in 2006. For those members who weren't aware, that was some 9 years ago. The three leaders themselves, that was many years ago, the boroughs said that once the plan was in place, their councils, respectively, in that position hasn't changed in the other two boroughs, wanted to revert the decision-making powers back to their own borough areas, which I think was absolutely right, and that's in effect what's happening now. The county councils support the three areas anyway in their own functions, so that's where we are. So this is actually fulfilling what was always intended to happen many years ago, and that's where we are today. So are there any questions? Councillor Campbell.
Just a quick observation. I think that gloss that you've given and Councillor Chandler's introduction has been helpful, because I think the report itself is very process focused. Yes. I think for those who don't have the benefit, it's a relative term benefit of being around and involved in these kinds of discussions, it doesn't really make sense, it seems to me. It doesn't really offer any analysis about the advantages of changing the relative merits of the existing committee and what we'll go forwards to. So I think that sort of colour that you've given is helpful, and maybe would have been helpful in the report itself, because it seems to me we have to make the case for these things and not just assume it.
Another point there also, Councillor Campbell, is that this council actually wanted the joint planning unit, which is the officer core, to remain in place, because there were savings there to remain on all three authorities. And unfortunately, this authority's vote got outvoted by the majority of the committee, so that wasn't possible. But our intention was we saw benefits in JPU being there, because that's financial savings for all the authorities, But the actual decision making, we felt should revert back to the local borough areas.
I think that's very helpful now to hearing that.
I think it's clear. Well, we're very much hoping, and of course we mustn't second guess the Secretary of State, but I think the Secretary of State agreeing to the revocation of this order would be well in line with the firm intention of the localism agenda, which is to place the decision making as near to the point of contention as possible.
The Secretary of State is very keen on that.
Just a quick supplementary question was, there's no reference to Rugby or any other neighbouring authorities other than Northampton?
No, but I think what we did say is that we've outlined in the documentation that we felt frustrated by not being able to include detailed discussion with Wellingborough, but we've left it such that we can invite anybody along in future. Obviously we have our eye on Rugby. Every time a planning application comes up near our border with Rugby, we get reminded of the 6,200 homes to be built on, etc. So yes, it makes sense to talk to them, but I think they will speak to us.
They will do. Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think quite clearly the door is open for cooperation. I'm more than pleased that what we've got in place is also a cost saving. I've got concerns on item 1 of the recommendation, is that we as a council will be writing to the Secretary of State, although I understood from the meeting, perhaps Councillor Chandler can confirm, that individual authorities would also be writing to the Secretary of State. I would hate for ours to be the only one that drops through his letterbox. Is anybody coordinating?
I can address that, Chairman. I've been in conversation very recently with the head of the Joint Planning Unit. The committee did agree that the constituent authorities would each write to the Secretary of State in support of...
Was that to the county as well?
Yes. Well, they didn't disagree. They weren't at the meeting. But they didn't disagree, and I know for a fact that if we agree with this, we will decide on it. We pass it to council. If council then agrees with it, then we, on the 10th of December, will be in a position to write our letter. South Northampton Council meets on the 16th of December. And the idea is that the letters will arrive on the Secretary of State's desk all on the same day, to make it clear to everybody that this is a joint venture and not just Daventry.
Thanks for that clarification, Councillor Chandler. Any more questions? If not, are you happy to approve the 3 recommendations? Or 2 actions, let's say indeed. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Chandler. Your last item today is the draft housing supplementary planning document.
Yeah. Yes, a fun read, I'm sure you've all read it. What can I say? What we're asking really here is simply that we've been asked to produce, or we are producing a housing supplementary planning document, which will include the what was the affordable housing supplementary planning document as well, all in a single document. There have been appropriate discussions for that aspect of it with the registered service providers or something. No, that's not quite right.
Yeah, that's it.
I get them wrong. I accuse them of being equivalent to the oldest profession. There are some tweaks to the document. The opportunity has been taken to do that. The proposed policies of the housing SPD are summarised as a list of bullet points on the page 204, the second page of the document before you. And I think it's important that you see that there are things here which are very much in line with current government policy. Self-building, custom-built housing included, and the starter homes. The difficulty there is that the government policy is still emerging, I think is the word we use to describe it. which means that we have to drop a policy document trying to guess what their policy will be, and presumably they might tell us we're wrong. We've reached the stage now where this should go out for public consultation. The consultation period is normally 6 weeks. We're suggesting here that because of the Christmas and New Year holiday, we should extend that to 8 weeks to make absolutely sure that as many people as possible have the opportunity to comment. Because it's going out to consultation, I don't propose to go through the document with you this evening, Chairman. You'll get an opportunity to go through it yourselves when it's out to consultation. So I would ask, therefore, that perhaps you would note the second sentence in the conclusions on page 205, by providing greater clarity about the Council's expectations and processes. The supplementary planning document should enable development to proceed more efficiently, with all those interested having a better understanding of what is proposed and why. I think that's an important point. We should make our intentions clear in policy documents so that everybody has the opportunity to understand why we have the policies that we have. So the recommendation before you is a resolved item, remember.
Because of the consultation document, that's the point.
Yes, there is a resolution being that the document should go out to consultation. Not a controversial decision to make, but I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that it is a resolved item.
Thank you, Steve, for that, Councillor Charles, and also the extended period to the 22nd of January. The other point also following yesterday's statement by the Chancellor, of course, the ambition for more affordable housing. And I think it's quite good to get this out now because it might change in the next 6 weeks or more. Yes. So therefore, that's okay, because when it does change, we can adapt when we get the consultation feedback and take it from there, really. So I think it's helpful to get this out as soon as possible and take it forward from that point. Councillor Guildford.
Just the one question, really. I've looked through the documentation and I apologise if I missed it. But more and more, I've been asked, we've got the list of areas there, affordable housing design.
Yes.
It's often raised. But more and more, I've been asked in connection with bungalows for the elderly residents of the district. I don't know what policies coming out of central government. I hear that you're second guessing, but is this an opportunity to consult in that area as well?
I think it will be perfectly in order for somebody wanting to respond to the invitation for consultation to make the point that those people are making. Perhaps you need to encourage them to do that. It's difficult because as a planning authority, we can only deal with planning applications that come before us. Yeah. We can't tell developers what they must build. We can only tell them what our policies are or aren't, or what government policies are.
The point Councillor Guildford's making, you look at the list of what it covers,
yes.
It's not highlighting their bungalow, is it?
It's not, no.
That's the point. I think that's the question we're trying to get to.
You might get a response if you highlight it.
Simon Barrett, can you come to that as well?
Chair, if I may, if I could draw members' attention to page 239, which is page 33 at the bottom, just to confuse the issue. There is a section which draws in fact from the core strategy policy on specialist provision. Policy H1 of the core strategy is quoted. If we go over the page, there's a policy on seeking specialist provision and consultation question attached to that. So we have got a hook there to address all kinds of specialist housing provision, including provision for bungalows, which it did.
It comes back from the feedback.
And to add to that, Chairman, you will see, and this is a good point to make this point, that we've got questions in this document that when people are sent this in, there are specific questions as well as just invited to comment. Is the approach to the provision of specialist housing clear and appropriate? What sources of evidence should we use to support the requirements for specialist housing? Specialist housing includes the things that Simon has just referred to. It's in line with, it has to be, and it is sensibly, a policy H1 of the core strategy, which says across West Northamptonshire, new housing development will provide for a mix of house types, sizes and tenures to cater for different accommodation needs including the needs of older people and vulnerable groups.
So the point I'm making there is to answer Councillor Guildford's bungalows.
They are, but we can't say that. We can't say to developers that you're only.
No, we understand that.
That's why we make that point.
That's the point. Yes,
Yeah.
that point. Okay, thank you. Is it Councillor Vaughan? Do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I have concerns. I can feel the weight of my ex-colleague on my shoulders, and he would make the same point. Clustering affordable housing, phasing of affordable housing, and the provision of affordable housing. Both he and I had concerns in the past, and will have concerns going forward, that we don't repeat the mistakes of the late 60s and early 70s with the likes of Southbrook and the Grange. If they're affordable, they have got to be built of a quality, and the quality standard of affordable housing should not go down because of the fact that it is an affordable, inverted commas, dwelling. I welcome the second to last bullet point, Chairman, self-build and custom build housing, with a view particularly with regard to our aspirations going forward. The news, for instance, that Catesby Tunnel project has now gone to planning. There has got to be a working mixture of quality, inverted commas, quality housing to suit the higher echelon of the wage earners, and we can't, whilst I appreciate there are 4,000 houses due to come into Daventry, I would hate that we repeat mistakes of the past, Chairman. Thank you.
I think another question was around quality, to make sure that the emphasis on quality, which I think is probably included.
I think importantly, Chairman, we make statements in several of our documents that standards to which we expect housing to be built in terms of energy conservation and so on, but we make no division in that statement as to different types of housing. It should apply to all that.
The overall emphasis on quality.
Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Paul. Councillor Irving-Swift.
Yes, I am very pleased that we have a design criteria for gypsy and traveller site, and what has been taken into account is the new general design, because that will allow us, when we look at where they have to be put, to make sure that some people, when they buy a site and after selling to gypsies, they are of a certain size, so we don't have a huge problem. And because I have seen that you have to have separation between caravan and so on, that will allow us that if we have an application, it would be good to have that document to refer to help us to see if we have a problem. Thank you. So I'm very pleased to see that document.
Very pleased, you're pleased, Councillor. Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, I think it's very important to know that a lot of people's perception that bungalows are needed, and specialist housing is needed, is better demonstrated by a housing needs survey as it is at the moment. That demonstrates exactly what is needed and what is required. It's how you put that need and requirement into the developer's hands to ensure that you're going to get some of that built. But sending out questionnaires and everything, a lot of people around here will think, oh yeah, we need lots of bungalows. Well, do we? Let's show by housing needs surveys, show whether we need them or not.
That's a fair point, actually. And the other thing, of course, the market is actually starting to deliver, as you know, in this district, elderly people's residential areas.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, nobody's qualified in that regime, depending on what it's all elderly nowadays. So, unfortunately, that's a fact. But that's the point we're making to these sort of good time religious, whatever you want to call them. These are coming up more and more to the fore in the private sector. So they're trying to provide provision for elderly people. So the point you make is a very valid one, Councillor Osborne, about the overall mix will come.
To come back on that, Sharon, a few years ago when I was housing chairman, we did look at I think it was Bromford, suggested a scheme which was like a sheltered accommodation, if you like, but was bought. You bought your houses there in Daventry, and although there's nowhere that we can consider, there's no housing needs survey as far as I'm aware that demonstrate, that can show people, do we need that kind of accommodation now? I believe you do, but is it reality?
Yeah, I understand the point. Thanks, Councillor Osborne. Councillor Campbell?
Just a quick observation that it was good to see the policy fleshed out about viability, dark arts of viability appraisals, and I've noticed a couple of London councils have also done this requirement to make viability appraisals public and to have the default position on transparency, and I think that's very welcome.
Very good point, valid point. Everything goes into that. Councillor Patrick?
Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak. Just a small request, really, that this particular SPD is sent and highlighted to all councillors so that they're aware of what the content of this particular.
Well, hopefully this has gone out on the email anyway, and also come to council, so hopefully members will actually read or skim through this to understand what's going on.
I think, Chairman, I take the point. We can emphasise that this is
very important.
This is an important point.
The resolution which, if we agree that this will go out for consultation, and then if we just tell all our colleagues that it's gone out for consultation, that's their opportunity then to look at it, pick it up and
respond to it, actually. And then when it comes back, then we have the further debate then. So
that's right.
Yeah, which might be in council in February or May next year. Probably more May.
I don't know. 26th of January is the closing date for consultation, but then the responses have to be processed.
I won't put the pressure on. That's it. Okay, we're happy then to agree the resolved item.
Agreed.
I was thinking of Councillor Osborne, but no one else is. To speak on his behalf. Thank you, Steve, and thank you everyone else. And thank you, Councillor Chadha. We now move on to resources issues. The first item tonight is Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy Mid-Year Review 2015-16. Rather long heading, but Councillor Long.
Thank you, Chairman. On the 1st of March 2012, this Council adopted the revised SIPA Treasury Management Code of Practice 2011, which requires the production of a mid-year review of their Treasury management activities. This report is that review for the first half of the financial year 2015-16. The mid-year review covers the following: an economic update for the first half of 2015-16 and an outlook for the next 6 months. A review of the Treasury Management Strategy Statement and the Annual Investment Strategy and the Council's capital expenditure. Members will be familiar with the topic from the finance training session that we held on the 15th of July. I believe the best way to summarise this report would be in the words of their Chief Financial Officer: we continue to work within the approved strategy. Therefore, I would ask Strategy Group members to agree the recommendation that the Council Treasury Management Mid-Year Review for 2015-16 be noted.
Thank you, Steve, Councillor Long, and well done also to Audrey and Karen yourself, Councillor Long, for the 3 sessions on training. So I know they're well attended, so that's good news, and well done to Audrey again for your overseeing the financial function of this Council, along with the management team. Are there any questions for Chris? Are you happy to set up?
So a question, I think. Am I the only one who is nervous when I read a document like this that says we have a reserve of £45 million? And the things I hear in the press and on the radio that say that the government say you've got too much money in reserves, we'll have it, or we'll stop giving you any until you've used it up. Or does everybody else?
Audrey Statement's got plans for a casino, so don't worry about that. Audrey.
It's very important, members, that you don't look at that sum of money. That is not £45 million worth of reserves. This Treasury management is about managing our cash flows.
Thank you.
So whilst we've got 45 million, unfortunately, it's not all ours.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Chairman, if I may, I had the opportunity of appearing on BBC Radio Northampton last Friday afternoon to take on exactly this particular point, and it was a great pleasure to be able to defend a district council that was in such a good, healthy state for the benefit of its residents, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Councillor Hall. Thank you, Councillor. Are you happy to agree the recommendation?
Great.
Yep. We now move on to your second item, Councillor Long, which is the 2016-17 capital revenue budget and medium-term financial plan.
Thank you, Chairman. The purpose of this report is to provide an update of the financial context and issues that will influence the 2016-17 capital and revenue budget and medium-term financial plan. Once again, these were amongst the issues referred to in the member training session dated the 9th of September. The medium-term financial plan 2014 to 2020 is summarised in the table at 3.1 of this report, page 288. It was updated and approved by Council on the 30th of July 2015. Since the projection of 3.1 were presented to Council, the MTFP assumptions were further updated and revised to reflect decisions agreed by Council. The budget setting process involves constant review, and it is appropriate to further update the MTFP to reflect any changes to previous assumptions. These matters are summarised at 3.2 on page 288 and addressed in section 4 on pages 288 to 293. Capital programme details are contained in the report at 6.0 and 7.0 on pages 294 and 299. They are extremely well written, Chairman. I believe that no further comment from me could add to them. As was explained at the time, the Council continues to build a robust medium-term financial plan, as well as demanding an innovative and challenging capital programme. The financial strategy of self-sustainability, coupled with the criteria set for approving any growth, approving to help achieve the Council's aspirations, visions and objectives. It is inevitable that changes in future funding arrangements will bring challenges, some of which can be managed by prudent assumptions already built into the medium-term financial plan. Changes beyond those already assumed may mean difficult decisions around service provision, and these may well have to be made. And levels of reserves will enable this scenario to be managed in a timely manner. The MTFP covers the current financial year and a further 5 years. The updated MTFP should not be viewed as a fixed plan or a binding strategy, but as a risk management model with underlying assumptions and objectives that can and should be reviewed and revised in the light of changing circumstances and new information. With this information now to hand, I would ask Strategy Group members to agree the following recommendations. 1. The updated assumptions and proposals concerning the financial strategy and development of the 2000 budget process, as set out in section 4 of the report, are approved. That the revised budget projections incorporated into the medium-term financial plan, as set out in table 5.1 and appendix A of the report, are approved. That the draft proposals for the capital programme, as detailed in section 6 and appendix C of the report, be approved. And the limit on expenditure prior to Council approval of a business plan under Financial Regulation 4.6.1 be £150,000 rather than the normal £75,000 for a new Homes 2 bonus scheme. That's my report, Chairman.
Thanks to you, Councillor Long. I'll kick off any questions first. That's remarkable. Can I just say, I think the details on the capital schemes coming forward, well put there. One thing I'm going to say about item 65 and Canal Arm boat lift is that there's a lot of economic benefit wider than just the water spread and Canal Arm. It's to bring a tremendous economic benefit to the whole area. I believe it's about to go ahead, and we know we've got interest in that area, so it's very encouraging at the moment. Rather than that, are you happy to agree the 4 recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Thanks, Councillor Long. Moving on to corporate issues, now review asbestos management policy. Asbestos management policy, my apologies. I suggest sign guards, that's the text one to the sun.
Certainly, Chairman. I will keep it brief. The Council currently has an asbestos management policy. It's extremely long, it's extremely detailed, and in fact not consistent with our normal approach, which is to have a short, succinct policy and a procedural document of regular length that covers matters that we need to deal with operationally. It's therefore proposed, to bring it up to date, that we have a nice short asbestos management policy set out on page 308, and then the Chief Executive has the authority to approve the procedural arrangements.
Well, it's a very short policy, but obviously a very important one. So members have to accept that. Great. It's a recommendation to council. Nice to see. Thank you, Simon. Many thanks indeed. We now come to economic regeneration and employment issues. The first one is rural transport and economic strategy. Mr. James.
Thank you, Chairman. The Rural Transport and Economic Strategy 2015 to 20 emanated from a task plan of the Scrutiny and Improvement Committee about a year or so ago. That task panel made certain recommendations and approvals and investigations and went before strategy in October of last year and finally before full council in December of last year with a recommendation that it be worked into a rural transport and economic strategy. Even though most of the action plan and further work is certainly required. However, that is now done, and it is interesting because I remember, I think I was in on the first couple of meetings about the Scrutiny Committee, and I thought, I don't really like this. But it is interesting because it does include transport, which is an enormously wide topic. And bearing in mind what you said earlier this evening, our district is 257 square miles. I'm sure it says 258, but I'll say, well, you mean square miles.
That's 257.
You know, and we do have some important transport links, and of course we have issues that arise from being a rural and constituency. The other thing is economic strategy. There is a lot of scope for economic activity in the rural area, and it doesn't necessarily revolve around small things like basket making and farm diversification. There are some important activities, and again at this present time, not least the Catesby Tunnel project, which is currently full planning. There'll be some work in getting a plan of action going and developing this policy, but that should be aided when we finally have a strategic economic development officer. Apart from the cost of that, most of the other costs will be borne in-house with existing resources. And in any event, there will be quite a bit of partnership work too, partnership with other authorities and agencies and so forth. I would like to make a recommendation then that the Rural Transport and Economic Strategy 2015 to 20 be approved.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor James, you're quite right. First of all, support for rural transport is a big challenge in our big district, so that's very good. Any comments or questions? Councillor Paul.
Just a very brief one, Chairman, you will please know, is that with any rural transport and economic strategy, we have to take on board rules and regulations surrounding planning. And no doubt the chair of planning will have something to say, but when Farmer Yard wants to do something and employ one or two people, then he'll run into all kinds of planning problems outside of the confines of village, etc., not complying with this, that and the other. If we are going to have an economic strategy for the rural areas, I think planning must be part of it. That's all, Chairman. Thank you.
Well, obviously, individual applications are dealt with through the planning process, but
Yes,
it's an economic strategy, which I think, as it says in the paper there, shows this council's broad appreciation of the issues and challenges facing our rural areas. Bearing in mind we have a very wide, very sparse areas in some parts of our district. Councillor Chandler's area is really small. Councillor Chandler?
I just wanted to add, Chairman, that I hope that people will read this as not that we're just going to support these things, but we're committed to them, because it doesn't make sense otherwise. And I think it's useful for everybody to have these things listed as they are in this succinct document, which draws to the attention of those who may not be so familiar with the problems of rural living, that there are quite a number of things that we as a council can and should do to improve those enterprises.
Thanks, Councillor Charles. Are we happy to agree the recommendation?
Agree.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, David. Sorry, just a minute. Sorry, David, your second item tonight is business plan for commercial property improvements.
Right. There is a pink paper attached to this.
Can I just talk about that if I can, David? Because there are pink papers actually on 3 items, the next 3 items actually. So I'm just going to say to members tonight, if you want to discuss anything to do with the 3 pink papers, we have to take that out of the public session. So the point there is that there's nothing to discuss or to actually highlight in the papers. We can continue on the white papers alone and take those decisions. If the members feel they have a need to actually refer to the pink papers, I'll have that to leave that to the end of the meeting and then do it in private session. So on the next 3 papers, that applies. So thank you, David, on that point for reminding me about the pink papers. I'll let you go back to your papers, sir.
Thank you. The council has a commercial property portfolio that consists of about 106 commercial units and 28 or so town centre and shop estate units. It brings in about 1.7 million a year, and possibly, if it is possible, I suppose all the estate managers have a dream, it does have potential for a further 400,000 uplift if full occupation could be achieved. We'd like it to be, of course. Now, real estate suffers from obsolescence and depreciation, something which is often overlooked. And obsolescence takes a number of forms, either physical obsolescence or economic obsolescence. It can be one of either. The council does do its best through its estate managers to make sure that the properties are kept up to snuff, as it were, but inevitably the time takes its toll. That doesn't affect too much the shop part of the town centre shops at all, because of the lease terms. Some of them are relatively clean leases, which is good for management. But as far as the industrial estate is concerned, some of which are very old units, they're deteriorated over time, and a comprehensive program of repairs and improvement is necessary. This was agreed a couple of years ago, in fact, that a budget for improvements. Implementation of those proposals now requires approval. So whilst a large part of it will be for repairs, renewals, cladding, guttering, that type of thing, there will be some of it which may relate to, say, the division of units which might not be, which may be too large for market requirements and may require subdivision. That is a fluid thing because things can change relatively quickly. It is proposed at the moment anyway that a number of units on rural oak where a majority of industrial units are be subdivided. But of course market demand, if it picks up now, there's evidence of that in relation to these, might obviate the need for that. But nevertheless, we're talking about a budget of 699,000, a revenue budget of 150,000. We're talking about appointing a single managing contractor to deal with the implementation of the programme, to reduce the risk of having a number of different factors, some of which could cause problems. So it has to be done to maintain the estate, which can bring in a useful income, an income which could be improved. So I would like to make the recommendation then that the business plan for commercial property improvements is approved, being scheme approval for the purposes of financial regulation 461.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor James. I mean, clearly the focus is the same conclusions around energy performance in some of the existing sites which aren't very energy efficient, but also in terms of potential renting business for this council and what will benefit our taxpayers in general. As I said before, if there's any points about specifically related to the pink paper, we can't discuss that now. In generic points in the white paper, we can. Councillor Charles.
Is it part of council's policy, I'm sorry, I'm not in close contact with any of this, to ensure that all of our commercial properties have access to superfast broadband?
Oh, well, that's a good question.
Chairman, I think I would respond by saying, if that was possible.
The aspirations there, yes. If there's no more questions on that, can we accept the recommendation on page 331?
Agreed.
Thank you. See you again, Councillor James. It's now the Phoenix. Sorry. Oh, my apologies. No, sorry, yes, this is done to trick me, Chairman. Obviously, the heading, this should come under the heading of our portfolio Own Hills. It's under the heading, of course, of New Daventry. I'm going to let you off on this one. This is not yours. Councillor Hill, would you mind taking Phoenix Youth Centre extension and enhancing this business plan that should come under community culture later portfolio?
Thank you, Chairman. Right, this is about the Phoenix Youth Centre. Now, I'm pleased to say that the centre is one of the best in the county, and it's worth stating it's in our district. This paper is about the youth centre extension and the enhancement of the business plan. The purpose of the report is to seek approval of the revision to the business plan and to the project amendments. You should not need reminding that at the full council meeting held in May this year, approval was given that the district council would undertake the role of construction client in the refurbishment project. Within the funding stream there is Section 106 money, Sport England grant and a contribution from Landform, who are the promoters of Micklewell Park. However, the project is not now capable within the original funding, within their funding capacity actually. A shortfall of some 120,000 is envisaged, and if you look on page 338, there could be a maximum shortfall of 408,000, but that's assuming that VAT is fully payable, and we don't know where we stand on that. The project, in fact, can still proceed in full with the use of uncommitted additional 106 money. And as it states, this seems to be a logical source of bridging this. At the end of the report, it states, without this approval of the revisions, the proposals could not be delivered, and it would be an opportunity missed for the benefit of the community. This statement I totally agree with. I cannot think that there is any one councillor who will not support investing in the Phoenix Centre. I feel sure that all councillors will support this, and I ask the strategy group to do so.
Thanks to Councillor Hills. Any people want to comment, first of all, observations? No? Okay, Councillor Paul?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Wesley. My apologies. I didn't see Councillor Wesley. There you go first, Councillor Wesley. That's fine.
I just don't quite understand why we don't know about that situation, really. Fully support the Phoenix Centre, but it's just interested to know why we don't know about why the VAT isn't quite clear. I couldn't quite make it out from my reading of the papers.
So, would you like to
Chairman, it may be late to call him Chief Financial Officer as well, because that is a dark art.
You look after all the dark arts,
Essentially, our VAT consultants, we've used the council's VAT consultants. The VAT consultants have advised us that it depends on the way we receive the money and with what conditions we receive it. In terms of the Sporting England grant, for reasons I do not profess to understand, but I'm sure it is correct, if we mess around with the lease the Phoenix Club hold over the centre, it would be deemed a barter arrangement, an August logic, which is coding, which means that we wouldn't be able to retain the VAT. So probably we won't touch that lease, but we are working through that with Sporting England at the moment. So that's probably we'll recover that block of VAT, but we're not absolutely certain. The other large element attaches to what we've just dubbed as the gift in the report from the business plan. Now, there are a number of ways it could be presented to us that would avoid the need for paying VAT, or at least allow us to recover VAT. There are other ways it could be given to us which would trigger a requirement of VAT. Again, it would be classed as a barter arrangement. So we're working through with Landform those arrangements. We hope to come to a solution that will enable us to receive the money in a form that they're comfortable with and which enables the VAT to be recovered, but we have to cover off the possibility that that might not be the case.
Thanks, Simon. Do you want to add anything to order?
No.
Thank you. Well done, Simon.
I think if I might say, Chair, that obviously we have to take this into account.
That's right, thank you, Alan. Thanks for the question, Mark. Councillor Paul, my apologies.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think we could call it Batman and Robin. Anybody that can untangle HMRC and all their grey areas is absolutely brilliant. However, I think it's worth noting that the money that Sport England first intended to put in was increased considerably. It was increased purely and simply because DDC put forward £125,000 initially to kickstart the whole project. Sport England were prepared to put in 375, and they, after talks and saw the positive way that the DDC were looking at the project, immediately increased their funding up to £500,000. People will know that the Phoenix at the moment accepts about 36,000 visits a year. Going forward with the new extensions, etc., it will be in excess of £50,000, 50,000 visits, I beg your pardon. And one of the major issues, and it is a major concern every time we have a sporting excellence and our sporting trophies, that the portfolio holder stands on a stage and he says it's a pity that we don't have many more disabled nominations. Well, the Phoenix Centre, as part of the project, will be adhering to perhaps Alan's aspirations, and the facilities for the disabled people will be absolutely excellent. But it is worth noting also that it serves the district. It doesn't just serve Daventry Town. People come in from Woodford Halls, Long Buckfield, etc. To use the facilities. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks indeed, Councillor Paul. We have 6 recommendations before you, committee. Are you happy to accept the 6 recommendations?
Very
great. Thank you. Again, the last paper tonight is the same point regarding the pink papers. Anything we can discuss related to pink papers has to be taken in private session. Daventry Town Centre Edition Sites 1 and 5 proposed variations of the development agreement with Henry Booth. Councillor James.
Thank you. This report relates to a proposal to redeem a variation in respect of the agreement development with Henry Booth in respect of sites 1 and 5. Now, site 5 is the site that goes down past the gasworks down to where the old swimming pool was. side one, of course, is the site at the back of the High Street, which was going to be accessed through Argos, that sort of thing, other library and so on and so forth. I'll try not to bore, because most of the people in the room here have already heard this 2 or 3 times from me. I'll try not to bore them, except just to say I'll stick very briefly to the salient points. Henry Boot were originally selected as a development partner in 2004, and the original development agreement was completed in 2007. Of course, since 2007 we've had the financial crisis, and subsequent to that the woes of the retail market, in particular shops affected by the internet, and none more so than the food sector and the big 4 supermarkets in particular. We've got various problems collectively and individually which they're seeing to, as well as increased competition from the discount stores. So it was necessitated that in order to get things off the ground that we enter into a further deed of variation, since the last one was actually in 2010, when actually we got planning permission for this site 5 for a superstore. That wasn't proceeded with, and then why? Anyway, it's now necessary to make these changes in the development agreement. What it is basically this. Originally, we were going to have a superstore, and permission was granted for that. Now we are not going to have a superstore, and we are going to have 2 smaller food stores to suit the demands of the marketplace, and some retail units as well, as a hotel, family pub, restaurant, that type of thing. The reason for the change is basically because there is no foreseeable chance of the superstores coming into Daventry in the foreseeable future. In fact, the chance of any agreement being concluded by 2016 is being assessed at only 15%. And 15% means no chance at all. Now, we've seen some preliminary plans of the proposals for Site 5, and the conclusion is that they are not only viable, but can be implemented fairly quickly. As far as Site 1 is concerned, originally, Site 5, if we've been fortunate enough to have gotten a large supermarket to take it, develop it as a big store and a petrol filling station and the trimmings, then the value that would have been created by that development would have subsidised the development of Site 1 at the back of the High Street. The fact that we can't get big supermarket, we can't get a filling station there, the original development, means that we can't subsidise Site 1, and we've got to continually work at those plans over a period of time to see what can be achieved. Hopefully we'll be able to achieve our original vision, but certainly we are still working at it. Site 1 cannot be supported then by Site 5. What we're proposing is a long stop of July 2018 to allow the market to recover. After that date, and of course, the council would have a free hand to do what it will. Now, there is a plan shown on page 353, which is a preliminary idea of what might happen to Site 5. There are some other proposals which Henry Boot got, which I haven't seen yet, but it's a variation of what you see there. If you look at that plan, it's the north point it's actually facing down the page and not up. So the top of the page is the south. Now Site 5 is divided really into three parts. Site 5 South, which is shown at the top of the page, is Site 5 Mid and Site 5, which is in the middle, and then the old swimming pool site down there at the bottom of the page, that is Site 5 North. So it's upside down basically, but it's more easily understandable for being so. So if we look at the top part there, the first little bit outlined in red, that's where there would be a McCarthy and Stone type retirement development up in that part there. Beneath it would be, or is rather, the Cadet Centre, which will remain, won't be taken down at all, that will remain. And then there'll be a family type restaurant, pub sort of thing. And then below that a hotel, possibly a 60-bedroom type hotel, budget hotel. And then further down on the corner there would be a upper end type food store. Across the road we would have top part of that, which is going to be a food store. Food store, probably about 200 metres, I think. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units, either individual units or combination of doubles and individuals, that could be. 6 retail units there, and then in front of it, where that access is, would be a fast food restaurant. So those are the plans that we've had, or proposals put to us. Henry Boot have got, I don't know if it's possible to show that, yes, yeah. Henry Boot have got a different plan which shows a variation of it, which could happen. It is kept flexible because obviously we've got to find the occupiers for this, and the site has got to be modelled on what is possible in terms of the market. Now that means nothing to me as I see it there.
Well, ostensibly the plan hasn't changed, it's just turned through.
Turn round, isn't it?
1 or 2 degrees.
Yeah, turn round. So,
you got 2 recommendations, David?
Get me to try and help.
Yes.
And this is the first time I've seen this plan, so the help might be limited. Okay, so this is the site at, it's described as Site 5 North.
Just touched it.
So what we've now got are the 2 food stores occupying the space here. If you remember on the plan you've got it in the papers, one of the food stores was here. The road looks like it's being reconfigured slightly. So the 2 stores are operating at either ends of this block. Those units that David counted up are in here. So they're all still there, it's just been moved around a little bit. Car park has obviously been shifted into the space that's been taken up by the removal of that bit of the roundabout, the existing roundabout, and that road has crept, Broughton Road has crept further towards where it is at the moment. Hotel is still there, and the restaurant is still over there, and the fast food is still here. So that's more or less where it was before. Oh yes, it has moved slightly, only with the road movement.
And the carpet stones.
Yes.
Stays in that picture.
I think we can safely assume, Chairman, that Henry Boot know what they're doing when it comes to something like this. So they have good reason for showing that.
Right. Subject to that, the proposed phasing of the development is a deed variation completed by January, possibly a plan commission for Site 5 by September of next year, start of Site 5 late next year, and completion of Site 5 probably in the spring of 2018. In the meantime, we'll continue to promote Site 1 until the end, or until the long start date of July 2018. The proposed changes in the development agreement, adjustment of the mix of uses, more than one tonight, that's pretty much the same. The car parking will be public car parking, mostly short stay, some of the long stay, the benefit of the retirement homes, and there might also be some additional long stay. It may be that because of the way that it's let, car parking, that might preclude us from being able to make or introduce car parking charges at any time in the future. I don't think anyone would really be knowing that. The other changes to phasing. Site 5 is now going to be commenced before Site 1, because Site 1 is temporarily in advance. Permitting elements of Site 5 to be delivered in any order. In other words, we can choose what parts we want to start first, whether it's the fast food restaurant first, or the food stores, or the retail, or the hotel, or whatever. The other changes, moving along start date to July 2018. Some useful changes to give effect to any revised scheme, including the potential for the council to lease direct to occupiers as opposed to the developers doing that, and making appropriate adjustments to the financial terms. Changes to the number and timing of granting of head leases to meet occupier-operator requirements and for financial efficiency in the council's interests. Another important point is there will be a cap on the council's costs recoverable from Henry Boot, not more than 150,000 agreed in 2014. CPO costs, the associated costs of CPO, are not included in the cap, and of course the cap does not apply if the scheme falls due to Henry Boot. 6, the cadet centre and the surrounding land removed from the plan. Now there are financial benefits of this scheme, obviously, because the council will derive an income from it when it's completed. There are some indirect benefits to be obtained from this scheme: increased rateable value. Whether we can get in before the government resets the date for allowing us to keep increased rateable value not remains to be seen. It might be unlikely. But eventually, of course, there will be increased rateable value for the town. There may be some monies to come from the New Homes bonus scheme, and it's been estimated that could be quite a substantial amount. DDC requests to meet costs that might be incurred due to the change. Request 250,000 from earmarked reserves to give coverage to any risks, ongoing costs as the scheme progresses. And it's been agreed that Henry Boot will pay legal and commercial advisor charges relating to this particular deed of variation. They're estimated alone to be about 25,000. Of all the options that are available to the council, it has been strongly advised, very strongly advised, against terminating the agreement with Henry Boot. Not only with the financial implications, but that would leave the entire town centre division in complete and absolute limbo. We have a scheme now that is viable and deliverable, and all the evidence points that everyone who's been involved in this wants it to go ahead. So my recommendation is, and goes on amongst all these pages, that the proposed changes to the development agreement with Henry Booth Developments Limited be approved, that authority is granted to draw up to a further £250,000 from the town centre earmark reserve to meet project costs with the capital programme adjusted accordingly.
Actually, Councillor James, I have to say that Henry Booth has been with us since 2004. We've been really pleased about that because they've been committed to Daventry, and they still are committed to Daventry. The feedback I had about the new proposals, even though the final plans are still to be confirmed, has been very, very positive. They like the idea of the 2 smaller stores, and because that's the way the retail market's going at the moment. And we're very pleased. I mean, I have to say that if Henry Booth were to pull away, which I think would be unfortunate, we still have Plan B in place. So I don't think it's all lost and forgotten that happened, but obviously we're very keen that they take this plan forward, and we're still looking at options on site 1. So we're delighted overall with the progress we've made, David, and I have to say that the new proposals have been welcomed. We've had a publicity on this, and the feedback I've received has been very positive overall, and other members have the same sort of feedback. So the new plans have been very welcome. The petrol station obviously was a disappointment, but then that may come back in another form anyway one day, who knows. So I think overall, I think your presentation highlights a lot. Again, members, just to remind you, we can't discuss anything in the pink papers in the open session. So on that basis, I open up for discussion. Councillor Chandler.
Not discussion so much, Chairman, just a brief comment as an out-of-town member.
Yes.
I welcome this. I think it's very important that we can show that some progress is being made as soon as possible, so that we can underscore our strapline that we keep saying that Daventry is open for business. I know we mean the whole district when we say that, but if we can show that the town is taking a lead, as it were, I think that will attract other people's attention to it, which can only be a benefit to the further development that we hope for.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. Any other comments? Oh, sorry, Councillor Wesley.
Yeah, I welcome it as well. I think it's really, really good. We've got something on the move. I'm worried about site 1, about how that goes and how it's perceived, and how it's perceived by the existing people up in the town centre. I think the fact that nothing is happening on it may seem a bit of a blight, with people not knowing stay, go, what should we do, expand, contract, etc. I just think we really need to keep our eye on the ball on that one, and keep everyone sort of kept absolutely informed as to progress on that. I have to say, it does seem from this that it's, to me, it looks a little bit more unlikely, with the money, and I just think, maybe it does need, that nettle does need to be grasped sooner rather than later as to what is actually happening.
No, I understand the concerns, Councillor West. I mean, the issue is, of course, we're dealing with the market here.
Of course we are, no, of course we are.
It's the real market, but I have to say, this is good progress.
It is good progress.
And we have to reverse things at this stage, and who's to say what will happen a few years down the line. And it's very, very important to also understand the town is growing substantially. We know we've got more developments coming into the town. We've got the big one, of course, Churchfields, which will come along. We've got another 6,000 homes going to be built in Daventry. No, the homes will be built, I'm sure, in due course. And therefore, what I'm trying to say to you, the population is going to increase. The town centre, in our overall plans, it's over the town centre area is going to increase. And our plans are about long-term economic growth. So I think all in all, and I'm sure one day Site 1 will be dealt with in the right way at that time. But at the moment we're focusing on Site 5, and we've got the water space, of course, and the canal arm and the boat lift also going on at this stage. So there's plenty of activity going on, but I take on board exactly the point you're making, and we'll make sure the Site 1 isn't forgotten, don't worry, and work is underway. Councillor Guildford.
I just wanted you to say that, I fully support the approach we're taking.
Yeah.
I think there's some key elements here that show why Daventry is in the good position it's in. It's had good officer advice on how to proceed. It's been realistic as a council in what we can and can't do. We've taken a tough decision to revise the scheme. We've shown we're still open for business, and orders were being prudent here and making sure we can get what we can from the scheme as it is. On the ground, positively, I've suddenly people are talking to me about it again. They're mentioning it, they've seen it in the papers, and it's gone to a positive light. So I think all the elements I mentioned there demonstrates why we need to make this decision.
Very good, Councillor Gilbert. Councillor Howard.
Yeah, I do welcome it also. I'm just a little bit concerned. I know it's only a sketch, and car parking will be an issue. I'm looking at the two drawings I've got here. I just want to make sure that the developer understands that we were sort of talking about 500 car park space. If we're going to have the increase in the town, we need the car parking space there, because there's no point in having all these wonderful shops if people can't park. And I'm just looking at the size of the two drawings here that I've got, and I'm a little bit concerned there's quite a big considerable.
If I'm right, there's quite a few additional parking spaces being provided. Simon Barnes.
Thank you, Chairman. I think perhaps first I should say, it hasn't quite been introduced, but David Anderson, the MD of Henry Boot Development, is sitting at the back very, very patiently, very quietly, along with our commercial advisor, George Barnes. What I can say on the substantive point is the retailers would not come and Henry Boot would not build if there were not sufficient parking spaces. Their interest, even more than ours, is to make sure the development is viable, and that means the customers can get there. So we'll have this discussion with them. They are absolutely confident there's enough parking in the scheme for it to work, and therefore I think you can proceed with confidence.
So it's a substantial number of new additional parking spaces, I'm aware of that. Thank you, Councillor Long.
Thank you, Chair. Fully supportive of the scheme. I think, to be perfectly honest with the way that the commercial world has changed, the proposed development is right and appropriate for Daventry. It provides the additional offerings that Daventry has needed, and I've lived here since 1973, and I think that this will raise the standard quite considerably. In some respects, I'm not so unhappy about the position of Site 1 at this moment in time, because one of the problems that we have discussed at various times has always been the potential for car parking, especially during a transitional period. If as such you're not going to develop that, at least during the transitional period, that is retained. That will actually be there for people to use while we may go through some disruption. So in fact it might be a great help to us. Not saying in the longer term it may not be developed, but in that short period of term it could quite actually be very helpful.
And the board is quite right in saying this development might bring a lot more people into the town. And as the town grows as well, it's about the two things together, isn't it?
Yeah.
So thanks for that. Was anyone else on this side? Oh, sorry, Councillor Hills.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I too fully support this. I think when you look at this together with what we're proposing and looking at for the future of education in the town, and what we're doing with the special needs school and things like that, I think the public, providing we keep them well aware of what's going on, because I think that's essential. And I understand where Councillor Guildford said people are talking to her about it. Yes, I've had more people talking to me about it. So therefore we need to keep that momentum up, keep them fully informed. The offer that we're proposing with the new development and new development on the educational side, I think really shows, as people say, that Daventry is open for business.
Absolutely right, as it always is. Thank you, Councillor Hills. Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think it's worth saying that, and you've already said it, Chairman, so I don't have any problem repeating it. Henry Boot has stayed with us through thick and thin. The deepest part of the recession, they could have up sticks and walked away. However, they're still with us. Marchini Curran doing their master planning, absolutely, excellent. They know the various areas of the market. There is a business that I feel should be within the development, but I won't say the name publicly. I'll talk to Henry Boot after the meeting. The thing with this project, it's deliverable. And who would have thought 18 months ago that the big four supermarkets were losing money hand over fist, to the point where Tesco scrapping 49, etc., etc. Budget supermarkets, the Aldis, the Lidls, their market share doubled in the last 12 months. It's not rocket science to know why they've doubled. I go into Lidl and I buy my pot of coffee for £4.89, Nescafe. I go into Sainsbury's and it's £7 something or other. So it's not rocket science. The thing with this scheme is that what we've managed to do is we've cut our coat to the material that's available at this present time. Changing of retail, I've worked in retail and logistics. You need a computer to work out the change in retail. However, having worked it all out, by tomorrow it will change again. And mentioning tomorrow is Black Friday. Where did Black Friday come from? Apart from across the pond in America, Black Friday, get all your computer orders in. Wait until opening, wake up Boxing Day morning and go on your computer. It is not rocket science to see the direction of retail at the moment. I think the message has got to be put out there, Chairman, that our aspirations for Daventry have not changed one iota over the last 10 years. Site 1 is, yes, okay, delayed. I would prefer to call it delayed. Aspirations for Site 1 won't go away. Undercroft car park won't go away. The lime tree that Chris Over fought long and hard to preserve, that won't go away either. That will still be there and we'll still be working around it. As with the Phoenix Centre, where our original £125,000 to the Phoenix Centre kick-started a funding stream in excess of £1.4 million. I think our kickstart of £250,000, it will be the starter for 10, and I comfortably believe that once Site 5 is up and running, then Site 1 will, as a natural progression, follow on from that, Chairman. Thank you.
Thanks to you, Councillor Paul. Councillor Campbell?
Well, thank you, Chair. I was just going to make the observation that in creating a new fast food outlet, we're immediately creating business for the new community wellbeing kick and the weight reduction thing. But it's a slightly facetious comment, but I think, investing in a fast food outlet, we obviously need to make sure that we're investing in healthy and outdoor spaces and all the concerns that Councillor Hills, I know, has about obesity. So it was slightly facetious, but also genuine.
The fast food outlets nowadays are actually getting health conscious.
Is that right?
No, I should say they actually offer a healthy option.
Right.
Whether people use it or not, I would have to comment.
It's also worth noting, Chairman, that a new gymnasium went through planning last night and was approved in the old job centre building. So we are trying to keep fit.
Well, I'm glad you like Councillor Paul, that's helpful. Can I just say a big welcome to our friends from Henry Booth at the back there, and I'm sorry you can't speak tonight, but you hope to see tonight support for your scheme in the town, the revised scheme. We've always been very grateful for your support for our plans at Daventry. The plans are overarching all over the place. We've got huge plans, we've got a lot of inward investment coming into the town, and this town is a good place to be actually, and I think you're going to see an enormous amount of growth over the next 10 years. These plans have taken a long time, they've taken longer because of the recession we've hit in 2007, but the plans are still there, we've got adaptation to the plans, and it's a very exciting area for Daventry area. We have a very wealthy hinterland as well, so I think the retailers will do well, and as the town grows, the economic activity in the town grows. We have low unemployment already, so it's great that we have low unemployment, and that will continue. So we're very pleased with your part of our plans, and we wish you well, and hope you can progress it as detailed in the papers next year, and obviously you've got the support of this council behind you, so I think that's important for us to understand, and always have that actually. So we've always been very supportive of you as our major developer, one of our major developers in the town. So are there any other questions? If not, can we move to the vote on the two recommendations before you? Agreed. Thank you, Mr. Keith. Okay, thank you. No. Okay, there's no other business. That concludes this evening's meeting. Thank you much indeed for your attendance.